G'day guys, welcome to Ask Woodford. Look, I've got no idea what episode this is, but do you know what? I've got a very, very, very special guest. He is a man who trains high level. Actually, it's funny, Phil and I were talking before, but Phil, one of my favourite fighters in MMA is Dustin Poirier. Is he a good guy, a legend?
Yeah, man. If I could probably put a name on it, I would say that he is one of the most thoughtful guys in the game, you know, when it comes to just being able to, like, shake his hand and say how you doing. Like, he will go out of his way to help somebody out. So, yeah, definitely. So
he's a gentleman. Guys, I want to introduce you to all to Phil, tell me how you say your last name. I don't want to fuck it up.
Daru. Daru, like Daru, but people just say Daru. Yeah. Phil
Daru. Now, I first heard about Phil from Joe DeFranco, and he's doing fantastic work with high-level MMA combat athletes. Listen, this guy is legit. This guy is knowledgeable, so I thought, fuck it, I want to talk to this guy. We've conversed, go back and forth, and hopefully in the future, him and I will do some sort of collaboration where he comes to Australia, I go to the US. But right now, I want to learn more about you, Phil. So, Phil, I want you to tell all my listeners a little bit about yourself. What you said before, just in terms of your background, what sport you grew up playing, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I guess we could start from when I was a kid. I did Kempo karate, so I was in martial arts all my life.
Yeah.
Then from the age of about, I want to say 8, all the way up until my college career, I played football, American football.
Yeah.
Played for Alabama State University.
Just wait. Can I say one thing for everyone out there? This guy can play. Man, that's bro. When you told me that, because I interned at Maryland in their football at Maryland, their strength and conditioning. To play Div 1 ball, you have to be very good. You must, but don't be don't be humble, bro. Don't be humble. You must have been pretty good.
So we talked about this off air, but I mean, growing up in Florida, it's kind of a way of passage. Like, if you don't know how to play football or American football, it's like you basically don't know what you're doing in life. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I was pretty good, man. I got highly recruited as a high school athlete. You know, all county, all state, my junior and senior year.
Yeah.
You know, went to a Division I football, school, especially in Alabama. It's big out there.
Yeah.
Ran a 4.40.
Woo! Damn! Do you reckon you can still run that? Be serious.
Man, you know what? I haven't really tested it, but you know what? A lot of my fighters think that they can beat me and outrun me, especially like my littler guys, like my 155, 145 pound
Frankie?
guys. Man.
Frankie?
Nah, Frankie knows he can't beat me. Come on. Nah, but I mean, well, let's face it. Let me just put this disclaimer out there. A lot of fighters really can't run.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they can't run.
Yeah, they're not really runners, man. So I mean, that's why they fight. So I guess But
So you were Div 1. You were at the Div 1 college.
Yep. And from there, studying exercise science.
Yeah.
I was always in love with the weight room. Like, I started lifting weights around 13 years old. Getting stronger, getting faster, getting more powerful for football and all the other sports I was playing at the time.
Yep.
So I picked my strength conditioning coach's brain a lot of the times when it came down to progressions and periodization schemes and things like that.
Yeah.
And I was still, like, reading on my own and things. And the only thing that really stopped me there was my parents did get sick.
Yep.
My mom developed lupus, and my dad got in a bad car accident, so they both couldn't work, basically.
Yep.
So I ended up leaving my scholarship on the table and actually leaving. And at that time, I was kind of lost, as in, like, okay, well, what do I need to do now to fill a void of competitiveness? And I just still wanted to be an athlete. I still wanted to compete. So I was like, well, MMA is getting really big, and I was boxing on the off season in school. So I was still doing classes here at the local university and also training. So I met a guy by the name of Dean Thomas, who was a UFC veteran. He's one of the head coaches over at American Top Team now, but he had a satellite gym about 90 minutes north of where I'm at in Coconut Creek, which is where the headquarters is for American Top Team. And he had his own gym, so I started working with him. And, did some amateur fights, was very successful there.
What was your amateur record? What was your amateur record?
I was 4-0. I was 4-0. 4-0. So,
yeah.
I mean, and remember, this is like 2010, 11, where like amateur fighting really wasn't big. Like nowadays, these kids do like 20, 30 amateur fights in MMA, where it really wasn't. And amateur fights back then, we had no shin pads. It wasn't like big gloves. It was actually, you were fighting. And I remember fighting in like the backwoods of Louisiana and getting elbowed where you really aren't supposed to elbow at this point. But like, it really didn't matter. I fought in Louisiana with like Walmart gloves that my teammate had, who was a heavyweight. So the gloves didn't even fit me, and we still got sanctioned to fight. So that's just how it started. That's how it started basically. And after that, I turned pro. And had a good career there. The only thing that I would say is that at that time I was also developing my way of coaching.
Yeah.
So I was training my athletes and I was training my teammates and training myself, and I ended up opening up my own facility, trying to do my own business and this and that, and trying to do these two things. I was very successful when I had one thing on my plate, and I was actually very focused in that. When I started to open up my own gym, I dropped and I lost fights that I should have won, and I was actually winning fights that I lost because I wasn't truly focused. I was worried about obviously coaching and training and running my business, that I wasn't getting a lot of time on the mats or sparring or things like that. So, but I started to hone in and develop a plan and a system, and I had people around me, so I developed a good team that could help me out, and I started to pick up on my fights. But then I started to develop a lot of concussions down the way.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, American football is primarily, like with me, I used to run into 300-pounders with my head, so a lot of concussions.
Have you just quickly on that, Phil? One of my supervisors for my honours is doing the main research on concussion right now. Have you had any issues because of your former football days? Have you had a scan, a CT scan, or?
Yeah. So this is actually what happened was I was training for my last fight and I got concussed. Kind of a freak accident. One of my teammates actually came down. We were drilling. We weren't even going live. And he came down, did a spinning back kick, and I tried to slip it, and he hit me in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And I've gotten concussed before. Just this time it was a little worse, and it didn't subside. It kept on lingering. Yeah. So I did go to a neurologist, and he ran a CT, and he also looked inside and basically seen little beta amyloid plaques inside my neurons.
Yep.
He said if I don't stop doing what I'm doing, that I will have like Alzheimer's by the time I'm 50.
CTE, I think it's called CTE. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, CTE. Yeah. I mean, any type of a traumatic brain injury is going to occur, but it wasn't CTE at the time.
Yeah.
It was just from that it could end up happening, but CTE wasn't big at the time.
I didn't understand it. Yeah.
Basically, he was just giving me a warning. And had a decision to make. And at the time, I was doing really well with my business. My coaching was thriving. I had a full family. I just had my son. So, I mean, it was a decision I had to make. So I called Dean and I asked him, what should I do? And it was a big decision, but I ended up having to retire from the sport of MMA or just competing. And, so after that, I had a lot of time on my hands. I wasn't really training like that. So I ended up asking him, if he had anybody that he wanted me to work with down at American Top Team. And, he's like, oh, you might be in luck because the old strength and conditioning coach is actually leaving. So I got the call down there. He's like, yo, can you bring your resume? So I brought my resume down that day, actually, and I trained Dustin. I trained Tisha Torres, King Mo Lawal, and Hector Lombard. So I trained all these guys the first day I was there. And they knew me because I used to come down there and train as a fighter, but they didn't know me as a coach yet.
Yeah.
So they got to, feel me out and see how I coach. And then from there, I pretty much went down there on my own dime for a good 2 months before I actually got on payroll and was, considered a full-time coach there. So I was putting in the miles. I live 90 minutes away from American Top Team. So it's a 90-minute drive. I drive down there probably 4 days a week. So, and I also have my 2 gyms up here in one of them now, and I have another powerlifting gym that I work out of too. So, I mean, it's a lot, but honestly, I'm one of those people that need to do a lot of things at once, I guess, you know what I mean? And I'm finding a way to do it with a systematic approach, just as long as I have a good schedule. And I talked about this on Joe's podcast. He asked me, like, how do I do it? And it's just having a solid team and having a schedule in place that'll help you stay optimal when it comes down to getting things accomplished. So that's pretty much what it is right now. Since I've been at American Top Team, I've trained over, I want to say, about 200 fighters. I have 62 right now on the roster. We have 5 world champions.
So just quickly, Phil, because a lot of people in Australia wouldn't understand this, like who don't follow. But American Top Team, can you explain what American Top Team is?
Yeah, so American Top Team is one of the biggest gyms for MMA in the world.
Yeah.
We have roughly over 150 pro fighters in the gym.
Yeah.
Most of them are in the UFC or in Bellator.
Yeah.
And then the others are PFL and ONE FC and those types of big organizations. And we have when it comes to champions, world champions, I think right now we have 5 world champions. We have a double champ with Amanda Nunes. Tyron Woodley was a champ. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, former champ.
Wait, Tyron Woodley you work with Tyron Woodley?
I've worked with Tyron. Me and Tyron actually go way back because of Dean. And Dean started with him.
Yeah.
Tyron used to come to Dean's school when I was still a pro.
Yeah.
But Tyron has his own gym in St. Louis where he lives.
Yeah.
And he kind of cross-trains. He never really comes to American Top Team in Coconut Creek because of Colby Covington. And just because it's easier for him to go to his own gym.
His own gym,
Yeah, so I mean...
In terms of so I'm trying to understand. So with American Top Team, they've got the skills coaches, but then also they supply the S&C coach, which is you.
Yeah.
Is there just one S&C coach, or is there multiple S&C coaches, or how does it work?
So we have one other strength and conditioning coach, but he primarily works with a lot of the Brazilians that don't speak English.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's a Portuguese speaking Brazilian, so he kind of correlates that over. I mean, I do work with primarily, I don't want to say primarily Americans, but I do work with a lot of other athletes and fighters there. I work with over 62. So I mean, we have, like, for me, I have Junior Dos Santos, I have Antonio Carl de Sapato, who's another Brazilian. So I mean, it's a lot, but the good thing about it is that we do have a system, and we have that lines of communication between coaches. I do have my own assistants, and I have interns that come, every other week. So there's a big group, there's a big team, but basically what I do is I'm overseeing the whole entire program.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I get it. In terms of preparation for a camp, how long would a fighter be on a camp? Like, what's the optimal amount of weeks that a camp should be? Because some athletes have to take a fight within 2 weeks. Like, so explain to me, what would you do? Well, what's a normal camp, and then what would you do if they only had 2 weeks to prepare? Which I'm sure that's happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue with this sport. You never know when you're going to fight at times. And even with the UFC fighters, Dustin Poirier, we were sitting in limbo for a good 7 to 8 weeks, where he didn't know if he was going to fight yet or not. But usually, full start of camp is about 8 weeks out. That's when the skills training, when the technical and tactical training starts to pick up.
Yep.
For us, when you're talking about a full GPP phase, I like to get them at least 16 weeks out, but that's very seldom. I barely get that at all. And primarily, a lot of the guys and girls are coming, outside of Florida. So some of them live, on overseas. Some of them live in other states. So it's hard for me to actually oversee it. I do give them an off-camp program that they kind of do, but a lot of times, man, with these guys and girls, if they don't really know, because they're not very efficient in the weight room just yet, right? They're very novice when it comes down to weight training. So if they don't have a coach that they have back home, it's kind of hard for them to go through the program. But ideally I like to have them about 12 weeks to get some sort of general physical preparedness, and then we can work into an 8-week camp.
Okay, I got a question for you, Phil. So, in terms of combat sport athletes, we're talking about MMA, we're talking about boxing, kickboxing. A lot of them don't have a good understanding of the importance of strength and conditioning for performance and injury reduction. Talk to me about the do most of your fight, and listen, in America, and this is I've been to America 3 to 4 times. Your understanding, like athletes in America understand the importance of strength and conditioning a lot better than the Australian athletes. How do most of the combat sport athletes you deal with understand the importance of strength and power development?
Well, nowadays, we're coming from a different approach, where before it was more about just kind of running to the dirt, condition.
Yep.
Where most of us now are taking a systematic approach where we're trying to make sure that we're giving the body some armor and overall longevity for their sport. So we're prolonging their career with physical preparation.
Yep.
And then they want to increase their overall athleticism by means of strength, power, explosiveness, speed, things like that, so that they can have an edge. I always say when a fighter has equal amount of skill and talent, the X factor is going to be how strong they actually are. And that comes from all aspects of strength and conditioning.
Yep.
So if they have that X factor, they'll be able to win the fight through not just being skillful and tactical, but also having the physical capabilities to dominate a fight. Yep. So that's why a lot of the fighters nowadays are more apt to understanding that, and they actually come to me because they want that extra edge. And a lot of my guys and girls are they're very seasoned, right? They've been in the game for a long time. So for a lot of them, they don't really need a whole lot of skill work, right? They're pretty technically sound as it is. Now, that's not to say that they don't do the skills training, they don't drill. And a lot of them love to do that, don't get me wrong. But a guy like Dustin Poirier, he really doesn't need to spar thousands of rounds anymore. He knows he can fight. So a lot of the time it's just kind of increasing overall athleticism that will correlate over into the fight game.
How much do you think, I've talked to a lot of people about this, how much do you think our role impacts their performance in terms of competition? Because there's 2 schools of camps, right? There's one camp that thinks that it's purely technical and tactical, and there's the other one that's saying, no, you do need that physical preparation side.
Yeah.
How much you reckon transference?
Well, listen, in order to enhance the capabilities of your skills and technical training, you need to make sure you have the physical capabilities of training.
Correct.
Right? So we have to make sure that they have that general side of physical fitness so that they can actually train more efficiently.
Yep.
A lot of times, and also you got to think of it from a confidence perspective. Like Junior Dos Santos was ultimately confident in his abilities going into this last fight because we put in the work.
Did he win? He won, didn't he?
Yeah, he knocked out Derek Lewis.
Did he knock out Derek Lewis?
Yeah.
Jesus. Just quickly, before I forget, I watched the fight, Joanna, her name's Joanna? Is it?
Yeah.
I saw it one fight to the next fight, but you could see her strength through her lower body, her hips, her core, and everything. Yeah. And I messaged you. Remember, I messaged you and I said, that was a product. And I saw that her just being strong with the hips and the core was so she could stand up and not be taken down was just such a big thing. And for me to see that, this in my area isn't like MMA like yours, but as a physical preparation coach, to see that, it makes a massive difference, wouldn't it?
For sure. Like I said, if you can't go in there and honestly, and Joanna, I wish I did have a little bit more time with her because she does go to Poland and she stays there, but with that being said, we had 11 sessions with her before she fought Shevchenko, and she put on a lot of good, solid muscle and strength and was able to hold her own against a very solid, strong opponent. I
messaged you, she more than, that Shevchenko is a beast. And your girl was just what you did with her. You could see she put on more muscle, body armor. You could see she was stronger. I thought personally, fantastic. I thought you did real well.
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot coming from you. And like with the same thing with Junior, it's like working on those things that he needs to work on outside of his skill work that can complement his overall technique and tactical, game plan.
Yeah.
With that, we're working on his agility, his change of direction, getting in and out of positions, and having the ability to produce powerful integration. That's what we're trying to sustain technical when slightly fatigued, because we want to make sure that they have the ability to end the fight in the first or the fifth round, no matter what.
Yeah.
So, I don't fucking remember where I was at, but at the end of the day, like, I think that we're giving them the physical capabilities to do what they need to do to be successful, on top of giving them the confidence from a mentality standpoint, because once they step into the cage, trust me, I know it's 90% mental. If you're not confident in your approach, that's why Conor was so good for so many years.
Thank you. Conor, listen, you're a smart dude, yeah? You're very smart at MMA. You understand it. Do you agree with me on this statement, Phil? He beat Jose Aldo before the fight had even started. Correct or not?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, he beat him all the way up when he was doing the press conference with him.
Yeah.
That whole tour was centered around him already beating him mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
And that's what Conor does. And Dustin even told me back then, when Conor came out, and remember, Dustin fought him like in the beginning stages of Conor's growth.
Yeah.
And Dustin told me, he's like, man, he really messed me up a little bit, but now Dustin doesn't get fazed by any of that shit because of Conor doing that to him.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you have that confidence in yourself, in your abilities, through training the right ways and training obviously with ultimate effort, then when you get into the cage, nothing's going to stop you, and it's really just a fight against yourself, because there's nothing else really in your way but that person that thinks he's going to defeat you. But you have ultimate confidence in your abilities and your approach going into the fight.
Do you know what I like what you said there? I think every sport has a physical component you need to develop. Now, by developing that physical component and then integrating with the technical and tactical component, when you do perform and you compete, you're going to compete at a higher level, everything being equal. But the most important thing is the psychological side of it. And preparation dictates performance. If you prepare, and like what you said with Dos Santos, you prepared him and he was good to go. He physically was in the right condition, and then he went out and he executed and he performed well. And I think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is better for me than actually seeing my fighters put in the work and see exactly what comes out of it inside the cage. Now, I mean, listen, it's wins and losses. This sport is crazy, and you can't really hang your head up on that. Some people are going to lose, some people are going to win. It is what it is. But as long as they put in the maximal effort inside of the training camp, and then they go out there and they execute what we've worked on, and you can see it through their physicality, because let's face it, as physical preparation coaches, we want to see physicality. We want to see strength. We want to see explosiveness.
Correct.
We want to see speed, and we want to see it constant. We want to see that endurance there.
Yeah.
Especially in a fight, I have ultimate confidence in my guys, but I'm more nervous watching them than I ever was in a fight. You know what I'm saying? Just because I don't have the control anymore. Once they leave the gym, I don't have that control. Once they step in the cage, it's all them. But I damn sure scream like a little kid when they win their fights. Because I'm watching somebody, right, that's my own self-power personified in them. Which I tell Dustin this, I'm like, listen, bro, I cannot fight anymore. You are the guy now. You've been the guy. Keep doing what you're doing, because I'm looking at you and I'm celebrating your accomplishments just like they're my own. So
Dustin's, as I told you, Dustin's my favourite fighter. So if you need to tell him that a kid from Australia, a coach from Australia, man, my favourite fighter. Man, my favourite fighter.
Man, if you're down, I'll try to get him on the podcast for you.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you know what I like about him? I'll tell you what I like about him. He lost, his resilience from losing to Conor, and then his winning streak. And I watch, as I said, I watch your videos. We talk a fair bit, but watching him train, you see his effort, his intent, and how if you look at how seriously he takes it, which he should, but I just watch it, and you can see it's all coming together in his performances. It's been good to watch.
Yeah, and he's a good guy to be around. Like he's legitimately one of my friends. You know what I mean? And I look at him as that. But like, it's fun because we don't. I mean, when it's time to work, we work.
Yeah.
But he makes it enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's not super serious, but it's also serious when we need to be.
Yeah.
And then when he puts it on in the cage, man, that's his world. He's a fighter at heart.
Yeah.
I'm just giving him the athletic tools to increase his performance as a fighter.
Yeah.
There's some guys and girls that are either an athlete or a fighter. And sometimes you can take an athlete and give them fighting qualities. And vice versa. You can take a fighter, give them athletic qualities. Dustin like I said, he personifies a fighter. Like he is a fighter. Now, how do you get the fighter better? Well, you give him the tools from an athletic standpoint to make sure that he can increase his abilities to be that fighter at an even better rate. So that's what we've been doing.
How many coaches do you believe focus too much on aerobic capacity development still and not enough on neuromuscular strength, power, mobility, change of direction, stuff like that?
Well, I only work with and converse with guys that are like-minded, so I can't really talk about the guys that, I don't really pay attention to.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking, Phil, I'm mainly talking about fighters' mindset, right? Do fighters still have that mindset?
True. Yeah, they do. I mean, especially the ones that are coming from like a Muay Thai background, a kickboxing background. That's all they know really is road work, boxing, road work, and just aerobic capacity. Now, obviously, you do need to have aerobic capacity to have a base, right?
Yeah, of course.
But it comes a time where you need to start to increase your strength output. That's going to enhance, and I just reiterate, it's going to enhance your overall conditioning, right? Because if I have something that's less of a percentage on my 1 rep max, well, now I can do that more often and more efficient because it's just a lighter load for me at that point.
Correct.
Another thing is that, with that being said, if you want to end a fight early, if you want to make bonus checks, then you have to increase your force production, your rate of force production, your speed, and your overall ability to be explosive. So, so I try to make sure that people understand it, and they do get it, and from that perspective, like, we also make sure that we're getting a steady flow of conditioning through a concurrent aerobic demands throughout the weeks, because again, we don't know when they're going to fight, and they're training all those demands throughout the weeks anyways.
I was going to ask you just quickly, when they do their technical and tactical skill-based work, they're going to get a fair bit of conditioning through their simulation, their whatever you'll call it in terms of their rounds they do in training. What do you top their conditioning up with? GPP work, stuff like battle ropes, sledges, like all prowlers, stuff like that?
Yeah, so we do that off of camp, and we do a fair amount of GPP work in their accessory work just because we're trying to decrease imbalances, right?
Yep.
We're trying to get muscles that weren't firing or contracting because they were so stuck in fixed positions that they end up not even being able to contract those muscles because they don't even use them.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make sure that we're increasing, full biomechanics so that they can produce powers from all different directions, not just in one direction.
Yep.
Because it's a multi-directional sport.
Yep.
It's multifaceted.
Yep.
Now, with that being said, also, a lot of the guys and girls now are so efficient in their energy that they don't even get tired inside of sparring. So they don't even push the envelope or threshold because they're so efficient. So we have to make sure that we're training that in a controlled environment to actually push the envelope to actually get them better. Because at the end of the day, they've been doing this for so long now. That's not to say, I'm not talking about amateurs and guys just starting out. I'm talking about the elite fighters that's been doing this for years. What I found is that, yes, these guys, and a lot of them do have a crazy VO2, their aerobic capacity is through the roof, but some of them that are just getting through the sparring rounds because they're just efficient and they know how to flow. They know how to pace themselves.
Yeah.
But the problem is that when they get the pace put on them inside the fight, they're going to start to break a little bit.
Break. Yeah.
So we've seen that kind of, and I'll go back to the Conor situation, right? And there's a little bit of psychological there too, because when he found out that he couldn't finish Nate, all that energy got dumped out of him, right? Because now he's seen that, okay, he can't do what he usually did, and now he starts to fatigue through just being from anxiety, right? So now he's not efficient at his energy.
Well, he was being less efficient. He was leaking energy, and you could see.
Exactly.
But if you look at the Khabib fight, I don't know what you think about this, but Conor gassed. You could just see he just didn't want to be taken down, and he gassed really quickly. When he gassed, the fight was over, and Khabib knew that.
And the thing is because he's never been put in that position with somebody like Khabib pushing pressure on him.
Yeah.
Right? He's got guys that he works with, that he's been working with for years. It's like the law of accommodation. You keep doing the same thing. You keep training with the same person. You get worse. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if the same thing goes for skills work,
Yeah.
that's why you always have to adapt and you always have to evolve and vary your situations.
Yeah.
That's why we start to implement new things each and every camp. With Dustin, with Joanna, with Junior, all these guys, Edson, Barboza. I'm giving
Barboza,
them
did you train Barboza?
Yeah.
Man, damn, I love that dude, man. He kicks hard, man. He kicks.
I just did. If you look at my, I got a YouTube video just posted out on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Of his.
Shout it out. What's your YouTube channel? Shout it out. What is it?
Just all you gotta do is just search Phil Daru and all my
Phil Daru. Is it Phil Daru? Phil Daru.
Yep. And I mean, dude, the man's very explosive, bro. And the great thing about it now is that he is learning to be efficient in his energy, and then also we're increasing his aerobic capacity because he's one of those guys that's fairly
fast twitch.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're increasing the capacity to produce that power output for a long duration.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of lactic power, a lot of anaerobic alactic work, I call it alactic speed endurance work, where it's basically, bursts of power or ballistics or plyometrics every minute on the minute, so that he has to get his heart rate back down. Repeat the effort. RSA work, just repeat his sprint ability.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just call it a different name. But that's what we've been working on. And I'll usually do that. Remember, we don't have a whole lot of time inside a fight week or a training week. So I get my guys primarily only 2 times a week when it comes down to in the weight room. So I need to make sure that I'm at least giving them some type of conditioning that's not going to throw the organism in 2 different directions so that they can adapt. And hold on.
Sorry, I'll go with your question. I'm intrigued. Fight camp. So when they're in a fight camp, you've only got them 2 times a week. Twice. So you have to, man. You have to program very effectively and give them the biggest bang for their training buck. Really?
Exactly. So that's why what I've developed, especially at American Top Team, I've done other programs in the past, and when you have 2 to 3 days a week, it's very hard to do some sort of block periodization model. Right. And also, we don't know when they're actually going to decay adaptations. Because I don't know how what's their training age. And honestly, a lot of their training age is very novice, like I said before. So if we don't get a large amount of time in a phase, they're going to detrain that phase. They're going to detrain that specific strength, right?
Yeah.
So what I've seen, and I've been through it all, man. I've done weekly undulation, I've done DUP, I've done block periodization. What I've seen that works the most, primarily with my situation, and it's all circumstances, it's all subjective towards your circumstances and your situation, but for me it's a conjugate sequencing approach. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that they're getting some sort of maximal strength so we can increase force production, and then we also do some dynamic movements so that we can make sure that we're increasing that speed.
That's right. Hey, listen. I'll tell you what. The way you've just said it is exactly how I would do it, because I do the same thing with my footballers. I get them twice a week in season, conjugate work. Early in the week, maximum effort for their strength break work to maximize their force output, maximize power and speed. Dynamic effort work later in the week to stimulate rate of force development, power, and stimulate the central nervous system. And I think that's for the 2 times a week you're going to hit for what you're trying to do. You're exposing them to the stimuluses they need to maximize their training and their training, and then hence their outputs as well, which is so important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and honestly, when we get closer to the fight, depending on the person, depending on their strength levels, we taper them off. You know, depending on, like I said, how strong they are. I
Yeah.
may taper them off 2 weeks. I may taper them off 7 days out.
Yeah.
A lot of my guys and girls are leaving to the venue or to they have to do media obligations. So I don't really see them the week after or the week before the fight.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff is just mobility and drilling and getting the game plan down. But the final week before they leave, I may do, depending on if it's a female, a lighter weight female, or a heavyweight like Junior. We didn't even really have to do a lot of max effort 2 weeks out from the fight. We kind of ended it there, and then we just basically maintained that speed in motor unit recruitment, doing some post-activation potentiation stuff. We do, and I'm doing right now, just because we had a long time to develop the base, is I'm doing a lot of isometric holds.
Nice.
So I'm doing overcoming isometrics, and I'm also doing yielding isometrics into an explosive movement with Dustin. So he's doing something that's very high force, right, no velocity, into maximal velocity.
Yeah.
So we're increasing motor unit recruitment, we're increasing that muscle fiber recruitment, and we're getting stronger, we're getting faster.
Yeah.
But we're minimizing the risk of injury. And we're not getting sore, so that's even better because we need to make sure that he's constantly working and getting better.
Well, I think that's a big thing. You don't want them to be sore, because if they're sore, it's going to take away from their training. If it takes away from their training, they're not maximising the tactical component. I talk about this a lot, where a lot of S&C coaches really miss the boat when it's not about what they're doing. The number one goal is always the sport. What we do should facilitate the sport. It shouldn't drain out that recovery capacity. So I think what you were saying, Phil, is correct 100%. It's not going to make him sore where he's going to be tired and he's going to underperform at the tactical training, which is so important. Which is critical.
Well, and another thing that a lot of these guys kind of miss is understanding how to coordinate your energy systems and your strength work around your skills training.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of times where you can clash. And especially inside a fight camp, you got to make sure that you're properly managing out your overall workload in the microcycles, or in that week of training, or you're going to overtrain easily. So you have to have communication with the skills coaches, and you got to make sure that you understand the bioenergetic demands of the skills training itself, so that you can correlate your own training when it comes down to physical prep.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. What they'll do is, a lot of fighters that I've dealt with, they think if they're not tired after a session, it's not an effective session. So let's say we're doing a plyo or a power-based session. You should be just as fresh at the end as you are at the start. Where a lot of fighters think if they're not tired, they don't get their heart rate up, they don't feel like they've achieved anything, which is a big issue. And this is where a lot of the guys, what happens is they as you said, they overtrain. This is where communication between the tactical coach and you, the S&C coach, to make sure you're not kind of counteracting, and you're doing you're doing things that are kind of opposing it, which is a big thing. Conditioning.
In the skills training, especially over at America Top Team, man, they're gonna get a lot of lactic work.
Shitload,
wrestling.
Yeah.
And we have a wrestling coach by the name of Steve Mako, who's he's a world champion, he's an Olympic wrestler, gold medalist. And he puts him through the ringer. He wrestled at Iowa, so this is like that guy. You know what I mean? So it's 2 hours of like nonstop goes. It's hard drilling and then it's live goes. So that whole day, it's Monday too that they do it. So that whole day is like pretty much shit. With anything else. So I'll just give them some restoration work where they'll just do some low level aerobic capacity just to recover. And we're taking care of that energy system that week. So now we just got done with that. Now we can work into Tuesday where they're going to be doing their strength work and some anaerobic alactic work so that it can kind of correlate towards what we're working on inside the weight room. And you can do that concurrently as long as you're not doing two different energy systems in one training session, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of MMA guys, though, they would get a fair bit, especially because they're wrestling a lot, there'd be a fair bit of lactate built up. They're going to get... In terms of that, I talk about this a lot, where you've got that middle pathway. It's the middle ground. You're not getting more powerful. You're not getting stronger, or you're not in that other the aerobic system where you're not recovering or you're not regenerating. Where you don't want to spend too much time there, but I'm guessing a lot of the MMA guys would spend a fair bit of time in that glycolytic pathway.
Yeah, and honestly, man, if they don't do that wrestling class, then I will structure a lactic capacity or lactic power workout made for them, so we can, pretty much plug in that gap that they didn't get. Same thing goes for sparring, and the same thing goes for any type of other drilling or pad work that they're doing. If they don't get that in their skills training, I need to make sure that they're doing it in a controlled environment so that we can still plug that gap for that week. So that we're still progressing. And this is especially important outside of camp, because a lot of the guys won't go to wrestling outside of camp just because it is fucking hard, and they're trying to preserve, but they don't know that I'm actually giving them the same type of shit. It's just in a different form. They're not. The only thing is they're more apt to doing it because they're not getting smashed by their teammate, as opposed to just hitting a prowler run or something like that.
So in terms of with the what's their movement competency like? Do they, because we talked about most people think pro athlete, pro lifter. They lifting is not their sport. They've become professional because they're very, very good at mixed martial arts. What are they like in terms of their movement competencies? What testing, physical performance testing do you do? Do you do like strength based testing, power based, speed based testing? Pre-camp and post-camp, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, every day is an assessment. When they get into the gym, when they're warming up, I'm obviously assessing that. I'm assessing movement from the entire kinetic chain. So I'm also looking at from a base support system. I want to see how well they can move their feet and their ankles. You'd be surprised, but a lot of them lack dorsiflexion. And it's because of a lot of trauma. When you're kicking, right, you develop that scar tissue.
And
I developed it too. And so what ends up happening is limited range of motion. And so when they go to squat, obviously their knees are going to kick forward. They end up developing tendonitis in the knees, hip problems, back problems, things like that. Obviously, the kyphotic rolled over posture, that's big, that's very prevalent. Lack of external rotation in the shoulders, especially guys that are from a more background. If you look at Edson Barboza, is very rolled forward, but he has a Muay Thai background. He just kind of sits in that stance where they're always rolled forward. So with that being said, we have to increase that range of motion. So we do that with functional range conditioning and overall true mobility work, so that we can enhance the ability to move in all directions and have control in ranges. Another thing is tight hips, tight internal, external rotators, especially from their backside. So their back leg is primarily going to have a little bit more external rotation, and then the front foot is going to have a little bit more internal rotation. That also depends on who they are as an athlete or where they came from as far as the background goes. Now, if they're a wrestler, depending on their shot leg, that shot leg is going to have, so their front leg, wherever they shoot from, that's going to have actually more dorsiflexion because they have to roll over that foot, right, than opposed to the other leg. So I see a lot of asymmetries,
imbalances,
a lot of imbalances. So I have to make sure that we're balancing them out, but not taking away from their game.
It's interesting when you say that though, because I talk about this a lot. You want to make sure they're not too imbalanced, but at the same time you know what I'm saying. Like if you take that away, that's their sport. Where you've got to, if it's too much of an imbalance, they're going to get injured. We don't want that. We want to keep them healthy. But at the same time, a little bit of imbalance is not always a bad thing.
I always say you want to ride that fine line, right? So, we want to make sure that we're still increasing performance and we're not taking away from their game, but we also want to make sure that they're staying healthy and they're not going to do some crazy compensation where they're going to end up hurting themselves doing a simple squat pattern, So I'm giving them the tools from the most efficient tool set I can that will correlate and have the most dynamic correspondence to the sport. But it also has to make sense for the athlete. So that's why I do a lot of Zercher squats. We work on sumo deadlifts. We work on good mornings. That's where I'm seeing a common occurrence and a weak point. A lot of my guys, believe it or not, have strong low backs but weak hips. And that just comes from not being able to actually work the hips in its full range of motion because they are so tight. So if you have a tight muscle, it's hard to contract the muscle surrounding that joint. So what we want to do is we want to increase that joint's ability to move properly, and then we can increase contractile ability of the muscles that surround the joint.
Well, think about it. Think about it this way, right? Think about it in today's society. What do we do too much? You and I are both doing it. Where do we sit down, rounded shoulders, kyphotic? So we're weak, elongated through the back. We're weak through the glutes. You know, and exactly what you said. Like, you know, when they squat, if you have poor ankle dorsiflexion or hip mobility, you cannot full range squat. And I think this is where the perfect thing is. People talk about mobility, and for me, the best way you can actually improve an athlete's mobility, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, is take the joint for the full range of motion. Like, say, a squat. And this is to say if they don't have a structural issue, but let's say that they're structurally clear from the hips, they have like an FAI. If they don't have it, they should be able to squat full range of motion. And if they're taking the joint under load for full range of motion, exactly what you said, they're going to be better in terms of movement efficiency up and down the kinetic chain when they execute the skill.
Exactly, and that's the true definition of mobility.
Correct.
Some people confuse flexibility with mobility. Mobility is active range of motion and control.
In control.
In ranges. Yeah, flexibility is just passive range of motion. Like anybody, you know, it's good to have it, but if you're not strong in those end ranges, you're going to get hurt. You know what I'm saying? So we want to increase the ability to be strong in those end ranges, especially for the guys that I work with that get stuck in those contorted, crazy positions. They need to have the capacity to withstand load and to produce force from those end ranges.
I think a big one is flexibility. I mean, I think it does get a little bit of a beat up in terms of people these days are saying, like doing some sort of static stretching before training is no good. Which I don't know what you do, but I would do static stretching as an own session by itself, not before any dynamic movement or exercise. I would do it as a session on its own. But what you just said in terms of mobility, the athlete will get a lot more out of mobility than they will out of flexibility.
Yeah, so with my guys, like when we're warming up, we'll do some active warm-ups with some mobility movement patterns. Now, that's either controlled articular rotations of the joint capsule, that's moving through full ranges of motion. You know, so yeah, we won't passively stretch just because of, you know, what they say about, you know, decrease in force production or whatever the case. Nobody, I mean, honestly, the fucking conflict between that is whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to get them ready to produce force and absorb force. So I want to make sure that we're getting stimulation inside the joint capsule and the muscles needed to do that work, right? To get the neuromuscular capacity to produce force. So that's why I'm warming them up with that particular mindset, right? And then we'll go through a full movement warm-up dynamic all the way up through the kinetic chain so that they're fully ready. Because, again, like we're talking about, we have limited time with them, so we have to train full body. We can't just neglect, you know, quadrants. Now, trust me, I would say that, you know, we're going to take more time and focus on a particular movement pattern, like a different quadrant. Like, let's say I'll do upper body dynamic work, you know, but you're still going to get some lower body work in there because we have to fill that gap. There's not enough time in the week, so I have to still stimulate that.
It's one of those things. So when you've got them for 2 days a week, how long's the duration of the session for?
Sessions can only probably last about an hour, maybe an hour 15 at the most.
That's it.
Yeah.
Man, shit. Man, you got to be efficient, man.
I got to be time efficient. Everything's marked down to a T, right? 10 to 15 minutes per warm-up, you know, somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes for their warm-up underneath the barbell. They do their max upper lift in under 20 to 30 minutes, and then they do their accessories, and then we'll do 5 to 10 minutes of that anaerobic alactic conditioning, and then they're out, you know?
Shit. That's quick, man. Now, Phil, I've got some questions from some fans, right? You ready for these?
Gotcha.
All right. I had one, but hold on, I've got to try and find it again. Just 2 secs. Hold on. Here we go. Now, if I could find them, this would be good. Here we go. Hey, mate, got a question for you and Phil. I've had bad wrists for a few years now. Physio says it's a muscular imbalance of the forearms, weak extensors, strong flexors. Often hurts when boxing and with certain lifting movements, bench press, supinated bicep curls. Pain is on the lateral side of both wrists. While I've got my rehab exercises, which seem to be helping a bit, I'm interested as to what you think might be the cause of these issues, plus any helpful mobility exercises. Matt Stoney. You can take this because, man, this is one of those questions that, it's more for boxers. You'd understand this better than me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it seems as if, it could be the way he's actually wrapping his hands too as well. It can go deep as that. But yeah, with fighters in general, they don't get a whole lot of wrist flexion. So that's why, like, doing those push-ups and things like that, it can be detrimental if you don't have that real range of motion, that active range of motion.
Yeah.
So he might want to increase his active range of motion by doing controlled articular rotations of the wrist itself.
Yeah.
And then you can increase the load by just putting 2.5 pound weights or 1 pound weights in your hands and increase the load capacity. But it looks like he needs to start to, loosen up the flexor muscles by maybe doing some soft tissue work, and then from there I would work into those controlled articular rotations so that he can gain the active range of motion throughout his entire wrist. And then from there, man, I don't know anything else by that, but I'll have to actually look and see. But it looks like, from that you just have a compensation and then also an imbalance. So what you want to do is, with this point, we would try to negate the imbalance.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that he is having the
Because you're having the issues.
So,
yeah. I mean, look, when people write in, Phil, I'm sure you understand this at your podcast. People write in the questions, they can't be, and you understand this as a coach, we can't give individual advice because it's incompetent unless we see them face to face. Yet people write into me and they say, Christian, I've got this, and this, how do I fix it? I haven't seen you move. I don't know your background. Same thing happens. Does it happen to you?
It does a lot, and especially like on Instagram and in those platforms, man. And I'm like, I always say it depends, like that, like we always do. If you're a smart coach, right, and you're competent and you have some sense, you always start it off with it depends. So,
yes. Hey, Phil, context. Exactly. It depends. Now, Phil, one of my boys wanted to say he's a boxer. I mentor him. He loves you. His name's Romeo, and I said to him, I said you and I are gonna do something together. He should have seen his face, man. He's a young kid, follows your stuff. Yeah. Look at he's got all these questions, so he's gonna really get excited about this. So I want you to answer these questions. Here we go. First one. Okay. Aside from results, what were the top ways that you justified S&C training and injury prevention methods to fighters and fight coaches when you first cracked into the fight industry?
Numbers don't lie, right? So showing the metrics, showing baseline into their retesting abilities and progressions, that's what helped me solidify the program and help actually have buy-in when it came to the skills coaches.
Yep.
When it came to the fighters, just actually having more emotional intelligence, actually being there for them, and then them seeing themselves actually get stronger through the numbers, but also how they feel, right? And not just how they feel in the weight room, but how they feel on the mat,
how they move.
Yeah, exactly. So, with that being said, and then also when a fighter dominates in a fight and they're coming off a loss, or they're coming off the 2 losses, and now they're on a 3-fight win streak. And it's all because of the fact that they have the ability to be confident inside that cage and also have the physicality to take their skills to the next level. That's something that really resonates with fighters and with other coaches.
I think the reason why you got buy-in, yes, it's the objective quantitative data physically and from the athletes, but my biggest thing for when I watch your videos is that you actually give a flying fuck. You care, you love what you do, you're passionate. Yeah. Passion wins fucking hands out every day. And when I talk to people, and when I was on Joe's show and when I'm on all my podcasts, when you talk to people with passion and they love what they do, it's almost like you have like this bond with them. It's just an incredible thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic to watch. Second question.
Oh, yeah.
Second question. He's got a few for you. What are the most common miscommunications or challenges that you find when coaching combat athletes, e.g., training frequency, volume versus recovery? And how were you able to meet them where they're at, but also create buy-in to your program? Phil, just quickly, this kid is... just quickly, I'm going to link you up with him because I think he should talk to you. But the reason why he's asking these questions, Phil, is because he's trying to be like you. In Australia, S&C is still in its infancy. That's why I'm trying to push it forward. But this kid's working at a facility that's like what you work at. They train MMA boxers. So, what's that?
What's the name of it?
Oh, you put me on the spot here, brother. I'll find out for you and I'll message you. But he'd love to know. So, what are the most common miscommunication or challenges that you find when coaching combat athletes, training frequency, volume versus recovery, and how were you able to meet them where they're at, but also create buy-in to your program?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just overall frequency of training, right?
Yep.
They have to understand that resting is just as important, and the way you do that is to actually leave them accountable for their own actions, right? And when they feel themselves actually recovering optimally and seeing progression inside their performance because they actually recovered, that's what helps with true buy-in. And then with what I did with Dustin was one of those guys that always wanted to train. I actually sent him a full-on study because he likes to read. So I sent him a study on autoregulation.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. He read it and he liked it and he understood it and he was like, oh, now I see. And then also he got more technology as far as an HRV monitor, so we used an Omega Wave.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we did was I said, you know what? Let the technology speak for itself. I'm not going to be the bad guy today.
Yeah.
So I said, take the rest day, okay? Measure out your HRV today after he trains hard as shit, right, the whole week.
Yeah.
I said, take a full rest day. Sleep as long as you want, okay? Have a solid nutrition, all right, that whole day. Make sure your nutrition's on point. And then take your HRV the next day. The HRV reading was through the roof. He was ready to go the next day because of the fact that he fucking rested. So
and he slept and ate. Yeah.
And slept and ate right.
Yeah.
So that right there, he was in the red the day before, like true red, couldn't do anything. All green after, he rested and got all his food in. So.
Do you know what, like, even though you said it probably about 30 minutes ago, what I love what you said at the start, and you talked about auto-regulation, which I'm a big believer in, but when you said coaching, a lot of young coaches don't understand coaching is an art. Coaching is more than sets and reps. Coaching is about communication, relationship building. And what you said, Phil, which I really loved, was you're reading them from the minute, and this is experience, and this is what I talk about with my guys is, I'm reading my athletes from the minute they walk in the door. How do they move? Yeah. What are they, are they talkative? How do they put down their bag? Are they, you understand this. You've got to be able to read people, and that auto-regulation based on their readiness is so important. But to use such an important, and HRV, GPS, all these tools, like the subjective monitoring, stuff like this, are good tools to use, but it will never, ever take over the art of being a coach and getting to know your athlete.
Yeah, and that's what kind of separates, like regular coaches from the great ones, and that's really where I thrive at, is where I can actually read an individual and know that person. And like you said, it's when they walk into the weight room or they walk into the gym, I actually know how well they're ready to go, if they're ready to go at all. And, you can use subjective and objective indicators, but the main thing is always making sure that you understand the athlete and get to know that athlete from the ins and outs. And that takes a lot of time and effort on your part, not just to worry about the programming, but also worrying about the person and the individual away from the gym and away from being a fighter in general. I know all my fighters, and I know their backgrounds, I know their family life, I know the systemic stress that they go through on a daily basis. So with that being said, and I always say this before, that my guys and girls feel comfortable on texting and calling me at any point in time throughout the days and throughout the nights. Now, this shit gets a little bit hectic because some of them will call me at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I know I said you can call me whatever, but damn, I'm tired. That's just the way it is, you know. You cannot be that guy. Like, when you're talking about strength and conditioning, physical preparation, whatever you want to call it, we're with them a whole lot more when it comes down to the entire spectrum of training, as opposed to, like, for me, it's just like, not just their boxing coach. I'm doing a lot of different things, as opposed to just getting them stronger. There's a whole other side of what I do that people really don't understand, especially the young kids coming out of school, or uni if they're fresh out. They don't get it because they haven't been on the floor and they haven't coached individuals. So they have to develop that emotional intelligence and that overall art of coaching. And that's the ability to read and refrain. So with that being said, I think that's the main thing that a lot of these young kids need to understand, because they're missing out on a true way of coaching where, yes, you need to know the science. You need to have a baseline background knowledge.
The science is the foundation. The science is the foundation of the house. But the ability to coach is an art. And do you know how you get better at coaching, Phil? You'll tell everyone, is fucking go out and fucking coach.
You got to coach, right? So, and it's funny because these kids, they ask me this question. They're like, dude, how do I get to where you're at now?
Coach!
And I say, how long have you been doing this shit? And they'll tell me,
6 months.
I just got out of school. I was like, they just got out of school. I'm like, motherfucker, you got to put in at least 10 to 11 years to get where I've been, right?
Oh, no, Phil. These kids want instant gratification. Phil. They don't want to start here, Phil. They want to start where you and I are at. They want to start here. They don't want to start there. Listen, last question, because I'll tell you what, I got to work and coach. This is a nice question from Rome again. Both for you and Phil. To get your message across, Christian being known for calling out the bullshit and banging on the door of the fitness industry, as well as others having different approaches. Along with passion for what you do, what do both of you think are the underlying qualities that you need to create change in an industry that is overloaded with so much gimmicks and bullshit? And what are the lessons that you both learned in creating change in industries? You go first.
All right, so you have to be true to yourself, right? And you have to know when there is a gimmick approach going on, and you have to stay true to your own way, right? A lot of people try to follow somebody else's path, but they're not trying to do their own thing. They're not trying to follow their own methods and their own systems. There's too many people trying to piggyback off of people that don't really know what they're doing or have no idea and just trying to get likes on Instagram. But the main focus that we need to understand is that we're trying to increase the ability to get these guys to perform, but you do it in your own way, and you do it with a solid foundation of knowledge, and you don't go the path of somebody that you probably don't even know. You know what I'm saying? Do your own thing, make sure you're true to yourself.
I will say on that, I agree 110%. I love how you talked about people trying to piggyback off other people. Pave your own path, be your own person. Like, I'll give you an example, right? What you and I do, Phil, it's backed by science, but there's an art to it. But there's always going to be subtle differences on how we like things done. You like to Zercher squat, that's fine. Some people don't like to Zercher. I like to front rack my guys. Some people don't like that. Some arms up, it depends on the athlete. Methods are a many, principles are a few. Don't worry about methods. Apply principles in a practical sense and coach every individual athlete for their specific needs and requirements. Don't worry about what fucking that person on Instagram is doing. Don't worry about the gimmicks, because gimmicks never work. Focus on nailing and mastering the basics, because 99% of the time they work. And I'll tell you when I know a good coach like you, Phil, is when I watch your Instagram and you nail the basics, you use science and art, and do you know what, Phil? You get results. So for me, Phil, you're a fucking legend, and I hope, when do I come on your podcast, first of all?
So I want to do it next week, so we can get this thing going.
Let's fucking do it next week. Before I leave, though, this is for my boy, my boy and your boy, Joe DeFranco. Say banana.
Bananas?
Wait, say it again.
Bananas?
Oh, come on, man. You're better than that, bro. You're better than that. Banana.
Banana.
Phil, thank you for being on Ask Woodford, mate. It was fantastic. Look, people are going to get so much out of it. It was a really great insight into combat sport, physical preparation. Personally, man, you got a fan in me, man. I love how you do things. I can't wait to collaborate with you more because I think both you and I are very similar with how we do things. I would love for you to tell Poirier, please tell Dustin to watch this because I love the guy. He's my favourite, and the fact that you two are close, that's even better. He's a legend. For anyone who wants to check you out, what are your Instagram, your Facebook, stuff like that?
Yeah, so my Instagram and Twitter is @DaruStrong.
Yeah.
And then I'm putting out a lot of content on my YouTube, so just search Phil Daru and you can see all that there too as well.
Thanks, Phil, for your time. Really appreciate it. And thanks, guys, for watching. I'm sure you got a lot out of it. Guys, follow this guy. This guy is elite S&C. What he does, and listen, I don't admit it much, but this guy, when I talk to people who know what they're talking about, he knows what he's talking about. It's a real high-level conversation, and I love it. So thank you, Phil, and I'll see you guys next week on Ask Woodford.